Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. So I'm talking episode 9 of season 5 of Arrow, What We Leave Behind. And this is our big mid-season finale, and it goes off pretty solid. Not a very Merry Christmas for Team Arrow this year, again. So let's just kind of get right into things. I really did enjoy the flashback in this episode. It really does a great job of contrasting just how much Oliver has changed since season 1, where it really was pretty fair to call him basically a serial killer. And I do like that they've pointed out that, yeah, Oliver was going around killing all these people, but even though these people were bad, that doesn't mean that they didn't have people who were good who cared about them. I mean, the whole thing is heavily implied that Prometheus is the son, this Claiborne guy's illegitimate son, who's like, yeah, you murdered my father, so you're gonna have to pay for that. And even if his dad was a dirtbag, that doesn't mean that his son didn't love him, or all those other people that Oliver killed. People on the list are just random henchmen who just happen to get in the way. Didn't have people who loved them. I mean, I watch these things. I remember watching season 1. I'm like, man, I wonder if this random thug that Oliver killed has kids or something like that. And that's just kind of another one of the reasons why traditionally DC heroes are extremely reluctant to kill people, because they tend to consider life to be sacred. I mean, Batman and Superman are, of course, the most stringent advocates of this. Also, just kind of interesting to sort of see what Felicity was back in season 1. Just thinking for a moment, man, look at how far things have come since then. And just seeing the relationship that Oliver had with Dig back then, when it was very, very adversarial a lot of the time, and to the point where Oliver and Dig argue and stuff, but they're at a point where they're very solidly, I mean, there's even things to say. They can kind of consider each other brothers, for lack of a better term. Also fun to see Big Belly Burger getting the nod again. And we also kind of learned a little bit more about Prometheus' episode. We kind of get an idea of who he might be, but it's not really confirmed explicitly. We also learned that apparently he learned some fancy move that Oliver also knows, and that Oliver learned in Russia, which I'm sure will tie into when we come back and go back to Russia again in future flashbacks. And some people in the various comments about this episode, people with sharp eyes have noted that when Oliver goes to have a drink at the reporter lady's house, that she's got a bottle of booze labeled in Russian. Man, there's no way there's not more to this lady than what's going on. I really do have the feeling that something is up with her, that she's tied into all of this. I even kind of batted around the idea, well, what if she's Prometheus and this costume is all just some sort of extremely elaborate disguise? But that just seems to be pushing it a little bit too much. It kind of makes me wonder, well, basically it was said that Claiborne's son was born to basically Claiborne's mistress. Never said anything about Claiborne's mistress maybe having other kids. It wouldn't be interesting if, the mistress was this reporter lady's mom or something like that, and Prometheus was like her half brother or something. That would be interesting if you ask me. But again, that's just me spitballing. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about this episode? One thing I really did like when they were doing more highlighting about how much Oliver changed is, of course, Prometheus forces him to go through the warehouse, and we get to see the flashback fight scene, and Prometheus has some poor dead person just laying everywhere Oliver had somebody dead, which was just sort of really just driving home the whole, hey man, you're a murderer thing. And of course this ultimately results in Oliver accidentally killing Billy. Now Billy he just seemed like such an easy suspect for Prometheus. It's sort of it would make sense if he could potentially be Prometheus, but this is just a little bit too easy. And frankly, I'm glad they didn't do that. That would have just been a little too cliche. What happens here, where it turns out that Billy was ultimately a genuinely good person, Oliver killed him, and now, bam. I do like that, though, that they made it explicitly clear that Felicity does not blame Oliver for what happened, which, again, is kind of the cliche reaction you would expect, but they don't give it to you. And I'm glad they decided not to go for that. But, of course, this is just going to absolutely torment Oliver unceasingly, which is exactly what Prometheus wants. Nothing really huge to say about Renee this episode, although I do like that they kind of hinted that he might also be a father as well. We haven't really gotten a huge amount of reasons for his motivations in becoming a vigilante. And if he has a kid out there, well, that could factor into it somehow. And it could also explain kind of just why he seems to be so attached to Dig. I mean, Dig has gone out there and reached out to him, made a connection to him. But if Renee is seeing more and more of himself in Dig as time goes by, then that could kind of explain why he's been opening up a little bit more and more than we really would have expected, if you ask me, from what we've seen between them so far. Definitely liked what was going on with Curtis and Paul this episode. The way Paul found out that, hey, there's a lot more going on with Curtis than I had thought. They rightfully points out that, yeah, Paul would have noticed some weird stuff going on with Curtis in terms of, like, weird hours and coming home hurt all the time. And, it's kind of hard not to take Paul's side on this, if you ask me. I mean, his husband has been lying to him all this time. He's going out there and doing all this incredibly, ridiculously dangerous stuff. On the other hand, when Curtis explains himself, it's like, you don't understand how it makes you feel. It feels so amazing. And this is something that, I've seen in other comics where superheroes going to say, like, yes, the sort of life that I lead is extraordinarily dangerous, and sometimes it's pure hell. But when I'm out there doing these things, I feel more alive than I ever thought was kind of imagined possible. It reminds me of that great line from Hunter S. Thompson, who said that the only people who really understand where the edge is are the ones who've already gone over it. So, I mean, both people are making valid points here, which, both sides having good points is, in my book, one of the real hallmarks of well-written drama. But Paul ultimately decides to leave Curtis until he decides, like, okay, if you don't knock this vigilante thing off, our marriage is through. Which puts Curtis in one hell of a position. And what's really great about this is all part of Prometheus' plan. He's going out there and just stabbing everybody in the heart emotionally. Especially, this is highlighted in this episode, folks find out that, Evelyn has betrayed them after hanging out and getting Christmas presents from her just earlier in the episode. I mean, it's like, geez, talk about a knife in the gut. And again, it kind of just makes it seem weird that Evelyn's going to side with a guy who's murdered a whole bunch of police officers and other people who are innocent over against a guy who murdered a whole bunch of people who were guilty of really terrible stuff. But, we're rehashing things there with Evelyn. Let's see, what else? Actually, I kind of think that covers everything that we had to say about this episode. I mean, it's a really solid episode that really seriously ups the stakes, brings the pain, brings the heartache, exactly what you'd want in a situation like this. So guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. So next time, take care and have a good one.